Last week, as Edward was talking about uh, Colossians, and he kept talking about what he's going to talk about next week, I sat there thinking, no, you're not, Edward. I know you're going to be gone. But we need to communicate. We need to figure out who's teaching. And so Thursday, he came up to me and said, yeah, Daryl, go ahead and teach whatever you want. So tonight, we're not going to be studying Colossians. We're going to be looking in Genesis. If you want to turn to Genesis 18, we're going to be there in just a minute. On Thursdays, I've been doing a study out at Hover Manor with some of the residents there. And we've gone through a number of different things, but currently we're going through the life of Abraham. And last week we kind of covered some of this material, and I thought this would be good to have some more conversations with you guys about it as well. So we're going to be in Genesis chapter 18. Abraham. Let's talk a little bit about him. What do you know about Abraham? First off, let's just get some of the basics. Test your memory here as we jump into this. Who's Abraham? Okay, the father of the Israelites. Who's Abraham? When you think of Abraham, what jumps to your mind? Any stories, anything that stands out in your mind? Like so many of you guys, I grew up hearing so many stories. These Abraham stories, and as I've gone through this, I'm going, oh yeah, man, this is like a classic little kids class in many ways, because there's so many stories in here that are just they're that picture story that we go through, and as adults, I think we forget some of the values of these, but I can still remember that my little Mrs. Cochran teaching me as a little kid. And telling me to sit down and listen as I was in Bible class. Abraham. What do you think of when you think of Abraham? It's Wednesday, you're tired, you don't want to think. I know. Father of Isaac. Okay. He ended up having many, many descendants, even though he starts off with none. Okay. Genesis chapter 12, we start off with Abraham. We get introduced to him. He's living in this big city of Ur. And God says to him what? What does God tell Abraham? Pack up and move. Well, where are we going, God? Trust me, I'll tell you where. Well, how far? Trust me. And so Abraham and at the same time he promises him, I'm going to show you where I want you to be. I'm going to bless you with numerous sons. How many sons does he have, by the way, right now? None. He's got a wife, Sarah. He's Abram, rather than Abraham. And go where I'm going to show you. I'm going to make you a great nation, even though you don't have a bunch of kids. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to bless those who bless you. I'm going to make you famous. I'm going to make you well known. And your seed is going to bless the whole world. And so what does Abraham do? Like a crazy man, he packs up and leaves. I mean, by every standard that you and I would think, what he does not make sense. It's not because he gets a better job offer and everything. And because of that, and because of this, we often talk about Abraham as being the father of faith. Because he doesn't see what's going on, but yet he trusts God, and by faith, he becomes a nomad. And that really is what takes place for about 25, 30 years of his life. He wanders around in the wilderness, going from campsite to campsite, amassing wealth and fortune as he goes, by the way, until finally God blesses him. Now, all this time, if you remember in the story, he's having to trust God. He'll wander into Egypt, and what happens when he's in Egypt? You remember the story there? Oh, she's not this good-looking woman I'm with. It's in the genes. She's just my sister. I'm good-looking. She's good-looking. That's because hey, and it nearly cost him his marriage. Finally, he has to make everything right, and finally Pharaoh sends him off with more and more wealth and says, "You shouldn't have lied to me, but I don't want to tick off your God, and so I'm going to give you gifts." He sends him off. Later on, God he reinstitutes his covenant and reminds him, I really am planning to give you a son. I'm 75, 80 years old at this point, and you're going to have children. I'm not 75 years old. I'm only 57 years old. The thought of having kids at this age just makes me a little nervous, to be honest. If God were to bless me with children, it would be an amazing miracle, but I would accept it gladly, but it wouldn't be something I would be pursuing or wanting. Let's just say I'm enjoying the empty nest thing. It really is nice. But in his case, he's still waiting for a baby. He's still waiting for this promised land, this promised one. And so what does he end up doing to try to make God's plan work? You remember Hagar? Who's Hagar? Not Sammy, the other one. Okay? It's his concubine. It's his wife's servant in many ways. And so, okay, his wife says, I'm not having kids. Maybe God's plan, maybe the way that God works is He wants you to sleep with her so that we can have kids, and I'll raise the kid as mine, and we can fulfill God's promise. Abraham's a man of faith. He knows God gave this. He just, okay, well, I didn't understand God. I misunderstood His plan, so, okay, I'll sleep with her. And we end up with Ishmael. Okay? Everything is going okay. There's become some strife and everything in between them there. But as we come to this chapter here, so far what we keep on seeing is Abraham in his relationship with God. He's trying to figure out God. He's trying to go with God's plan, and he's struggling as he goes through this. I mentioned it a minute ago, but we call him the father of faith. And the more I read about Abraham, the more I begin to see faith is not this concrete, abstract thing that I can look at and understand, but it's this organic, growing. It's almost like it's like a cloud almost in many ways. And the more I look at it, the more I see different things. And with Abraham, it's this weird journey that he goes on to try to understand God and grow with God. And many times as we talk about faith, one of the things that really strikes me is I think of my own relationship with God, my own faith in God. Some days it's a real clear line. It's a real straight thing. Other times it's this wandering, doubting, struggling thing that we go through. And when I see that in Abraham, it gives me hope for myself in many ways, because here's the father of faith, and what does he do with his faith? Oh, it's this wandering journey that he goes on and grows in. And as we look at this section here, I want us to understand that and see that. Abraham is sitting here, and God has just, in the previous section, at the beginning of chapter 18, God literally has appeared to him with three visitors come. He sits with them and says, I'm still going to bless you with more kids. I'm still going to make you a great nation. And Ishmael's not the one, by the way. I am going to bless you, and I'm going to be with you. I'm going to make you strong. Next, you see this interaction that we have going on where Abraham pleads with Sodom and Gomorrah. And I want us to look at that within the context here, because it really does. It strikes me as some interesting things that we see about Abraham's faith, about God and our understanding of God, and a lot of different things in here. Let's read together, starting in verse 16 of Genesis chapter 18. Genesis 18, verse 16. I'll read since I've got the microphone, and you could probably hear me a little bit better. And then we can talk about this together. It says, when the men got up to leave, they looked down towards Sodom, and Abraham walked along with them to see them on their way. The Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm going to do? Abraham will surely become a great nation, a great and powerful nation, and all nations of earth will be blessed by him. For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep him the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him. Then the Lord said, the outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin is so grievous, that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know." Then the man turned away and went towards Sodom, but Abraham, remaining standing before the Lord, then Abraham approached him and said, "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous that are in it? Far be it for you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous along with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you. Will you not judge all the earth, who judge over all the earth, do right?" The Lord said, "If I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I'll spare the whole place for their sake." Then Abraham spoke again. "Now, if I can be so bold as to speak to the Lord, though I am nothing but dust and ashes, what if the number of the righteous is less than 50? Will you destroy the whole place for a lack of 5 people? If I find 45 there," he said, "I will not destroy it." Once again he spoke to him. "What if only 40 are found there?" He said, "For the sake of 40, I'll do it." And then he said, "May the Lord not be angry with me when I speak. What if only 30 can be found?" He answered, "I will not do it for 30 people there." Abraham said, Now that I've been so bold as to speak to the Lord, what if only 20 can be found there?" Then the Lord said, "For the sake of 20, I will not destroy it." Then he said, May the Lord not be angry, but let him speak just once more. What if only 10 can be found there?" He answered, "For the sake of 10 people, I will not destroy it." When the Lord had finished speaking with Abraham, he left, and Abraham went home. What's going on here? What is this text all about? What's that? Okay. Lot and his family had lived there. Earlier on in the story is Abraham and Lot had come to this place. Abraham literally says, "Hey, you pick left or right. Which one you want?" And Lot looks down and he sees this lush land with all this fertile, with good place to raise your crops. But there's these big cities there with some negative influence. I'm going for the place where my crops can get fat. Abraham says, "Okay, cool, I'll go on this side." Now, what's interesting is when you look through the text and you read through the section, Abraham continues to thrive in the less fertile area. His crops grow, his wealth amasses, his herds and his family, so to speak, his servants, grow even wealthy. Now, he still doesn't have a son. I'm not talking about Ishmael. I'm talking a son with Sarah. But his wealth, and by all standards in this culture, he has grown and thrived. Lot seems like he's doing all right, but nothing compared to Abraham. Okay? And so this whole area of Sodom seems to be, I want to protect my nephew. I want to take care of my family over there. And so his concern partially seems to be a concern for Lot. But what's all with this negotiating that he does with God? Oh. What is this? I mean, really, when you think about the relationship that this man of faith had with God, he says some stuff that I'd be going, "Don't strike me dead." And you almost hear that in his tone. Please, Lord, don't get mad at me for saying this. But what is Abraham concerned with, though, as he negotiates? He wants God to be fair, doesn't he? I want God to be a just God. I want to make sure that God is... I have this view of God, and if you kill it with so many righteous people, that makes you an unfair God, and I don't want to be part of an unfair God. Now, let's deal with this in so many ways, because when we start thinking about our image of God, it really is a tough thing, isn't it? My understanding of God as I struggle with who He is can get really tough, doesn't it? I want God to be fair, and I want God to be just. And I'll be honest, there's times when I read stuff in the Bible, in our Tuesday morning study, we keep on going through stuff with Elijah and some of these weird stories in the Old Testament. And Ken, you're in there, and you know there's times I don't know what to do with this. I really don't, because it's just so weird. I trust God to be fair. I trust God to be just. And it's in here, so I know it fits, but I don't understand it, because God just doesn't fit with my image. And so I'm not sure what to do with some of the stories in the Bible. And there's times here where I hear Abraham, and he's like, God, you got to make sense. You have to be fair. You have to be just. Now, when we really start trying to grasp who God is and our image of God, God is mysterious, isn't He? And as limited humans and as finite beings, we try to grasp Him, and no wonder we can't ever figure Him out, because He's so incredible. But at the same time, I think what made Abraham a man of faith was he was struggling to try to figure out God, even if it meant negotiating with God. And as I read through that, I'm like, wow, Abraham, I wish I could do like you. And what's neat is how does God feel as we try to struggle to understand Him? He's cool with that too. I almost hear God snickering. Okay, does God know how many righteous people there are in Sodom? He doesn't have to go to Sodom to go check it out Himself. That's all metaphorical, as God says, I'm going to go check it out to see how many are there. God knew before He got there. Let's be careful we don't put God in a box that's way too small. But yet, as He does all this whole negotiating thing, why does He do it? For Abraham's sake. You see, that's part of our faith journey. That's part of, as we try to understand God and we grow in our relationship, we struggle through that and we wrestle with that, and sometimes we have to make ourselves look silly in front of God, and that's good, in fact, I think. And I would dare myself to do that more. But as we look at this, I go, wow. And so Abraham leaves. And in many ways, I see him walking away, and he's smiling, going, okay, I figured out God this time. Does God know what's going to happen? What's God going to do? He's going to go to Sodom because He said He would, and Gomorrah. He's going to check it out. And within another chapter, fire and brimstone. We know that. Most of us, like I said, we've grown up with the story. Because there weren't 10 good people there. You had Lot and his family, and besides them, there were no good people there. And so He ends up destroying them. And so it's not like God really... He could have easily just said, Abraham, just shut up, please. There's no good people there. I'm big enough, I know how many. But He lets him go on this faith journey and struggle as he tries to understand God. I think sometimes we need to ask silly questions to God and try to figure them out and grow in our relationship. I've been reading a number of books this past couple of months. I've read a number of books that had to do with World War II, and some of them, the one I'm reading right now, has to do with the Holocaust. And one of the things that I just was reading today that was talking about was in the concentration camps, many of the Jews lost their faith because all of a sudden They're seeing God abandoning everything. I can't believe in a God that would allow these horrific things to take place, that would allow my stuff to be confiscated, my family to be killed. These ashes that they would be breathing in would be dead people they recognized that were being exterminated because of their race. And where's God in all that? And I struggle with that, I'll be honest. How could God let that happen? You see, I'm trying to get God in my box. And I'm trying to figure Him out. And for them, when they tried to put Him into their box, what did they do? I can't believe in a God like that, so I throw Him out. And I see some people, they do that. They struggle to understand God, so what do they do with their faith? I can't believe in Christianity. I can't believe in God, and they walk away. I'd rather them ask these questions and negotiate with God and struggle with that and eventually come back and say, okay, God, I don't understand you, but I trust you because you are the creator of the universe. And I think that's part of this journey that we need to go on, and we need to encourage people. Yes, God makes sense, but I may not understand how it makes sense, and that's okay. And as I read this story, I'm reminded of that, and I need that so desperately. Because struggles with our faith are part of what faith is all about. What made Abraham a man after God, made a man who was a father of faith, was not that he did it perfectly, because in just a couple of pages, you know what he's going to do? He's going to lie about his wife again. Oh yeah, great faith. You really figured it out. You really figured God out. It's, even after his son's born, he still struggles with his faith. This faith, again, it's not this thing that we can actually quantify and figure it all out. No, faith is something that grows, and it's a journey that we struggle with. Thoughts, questions on this before I want to jump into Sodom and Gomorrah here too, but what do you see in here? Anything else that you want to bring out in this? He trusts God. Yeah. Even after Sodom and Gomorrah is destroyed, he still remains faithful to God, doesn't he? Yeah. It's just in a few short chapters that he's going to put his son on an altar because God tells him to. That's how much he trusts God. Jason?
Verse 19, it kind of feels like us talking to himself out loud. For I have chosen Abraham, son of Jacob, and his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice.
Yeah.
And that's right before he makes his appeal for the just. What about the people who are righteous? What about the people who are just? But you don't hear doing righteousness, doing justice.
Yeah.
In that language very often.
It's a neat way of putting it too, isn't it? Ken?
Our faith kind of can ebb and flow a little bit, and it's very popular right now for grace to fall in and say, I was lacking faith, but God's grace will cover me, and I'll be all right, and we can move forward from here. And that's true. I believe that. But at the same time, there is consequences when our faith lapses and when we make poor choices because of our lack of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about, Abraham and his relationship with Hagar, and now he has a child, Ishmael. And Ishmael, I don't know. A lot of things happen in the Middle East right now. Could be a direct result of
Yeah.
poor choice and a lack of faith from a man
Donkeys are good, though. Remember that. I like donkeys. Sorry. I'll run with a donkey any day.
Consequences for our lack of faith at times. And I think Abraham recovered and he carried on the life of God, but his actions at that point,
Mm,
he didn't totally trust God that he was going to get the white bird.
yeah.
He bypassed the promise.
Which, and we're going to get into some of that in the next section as we get into Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot and his wife. There's still consequences when we lack faith, aren't there? And there's still, we've got to deal with the part of the reason that Lot is over by Sodom and Gomorrah is because he made a choice, didn't he? He made a bad choice. He should have prayed to God or done something, and then before he chose that. And as a result, he finds himself fleeing for his life at Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham, and like you say, Ishmael, there's that whole, man, his lack of faith caused, when we have a lack of faith, it takes us on another journey, which may help our faith to grow and be stronger, but it does have some consequences, doesn't it? And that's hard.
One of the lessons is for us to realize that my faith may not be strong today.
Yeah.
Take a good look at what I'm doing. Step back.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do anything irrational or don't do anything that can hinder future
Yeah.
family or future friends or future relationships with the church.
Yeah.
Do you think Lot was being greedy?
Partially, and it's hard to. There's a good chance of that. Why did he pick the lush land? Of course, he picked it because he thought that would be the better deal. Had he been a man of faith, what would he have done? I think he would have prayed about it. Said, God, or he would have trusted. If he would have been a man of faith, he might have been more humble and said, no, Abraham, you take the nice one. I'm just your servant. I think God would have blessed both of them either way. At the same time, it's one of those what ifs. I'm not sure if had he picked the other one. But yet, Lot does seem to be, he's definitely not the man of faith that Abraham is. He's not mentioned outside the Old Testament very much at all. And I'm trying to think if ever. And so, but Abraham, he is numerous times throughout the Gospels, Romans, I'm trying to think, definitely Hebrews. I mean, you see him over and over again. He's brought up in the New Testament because of his faith. So he definitely is something that shines on.
Lot's far from a paragon of virtue.
No, oh yeah, he's got so many flaws, it's almost as scary. But the fact that he left Ur to go with Abraham is kind of impressive to me. He didn't have to go on this journey. God wasn't calling him. He's like, okay, you're going to try to follow God? Let me tag along and go on this faith journey. I got to give him that much at least, you know what I mean? But we needed him so he could have part of this story, though. So, hey, it works out. Let's deal with Sodom and Gomorrah now. Kind of an interesting but dark story here. We've got enough time here. I think we can do this. It says, chapter 19, verse 1, it says, the two angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting at the gateway of the city. When he saw them there, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face on the ground. My lords, he says, please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night and go away early in the morning. No, they answered, we will spend the night in the square. But he insisted so strongly that they did go with him and entered into his house. He prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast, and they ate. Before they had gone to bed, all the men of Sodom, from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, "Where are the men that came to see you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them." Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him and said, "No, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you so you can do what you like with them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof." "Get out of our way," they replied. This fellow came here as a foreigner. Now he wants to play as a judge. We'll treat you worse than them." They kept bringing pressure on Lot and moving forward to break down the door. But the men inside reached out and pulled Lot back into the house and shut the door. When they struck the men who were both at the door of the house, young and old, with blindness, so that they could not find the door, the 2 men said to Lot, "Do you have anyone else here, sons-in-laws, sons or daughters, or anything else in the city that belongs to you? Get them out of here, because we're going to destroy this place. The outcry of the Lord is against these people is so great that He's sent us to destroy them." So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-laws who were pledged to be married and his daughters. He said to them, "Hurry and get out of this place, because the Lord is about to destroy the city." But his sons-in-laws thought he was joking. With the coming of the dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Hurry, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished." When he hesitated, the men grasped his hands and the hands of his wife and his 2 daughters and led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them. As soon as he brought them out of the city, he said to them, "Flee for your lives, don't look back, and don't stop anywhere on the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away." Lot said to them, "No, my lords, please. Your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have shown great kindness to me by sparing my life. But I can't flee to the mountains. With disaster will overtake me, and I'll die. Look, here's a town nearby to run to, and it's small. Let me flee to it. It's very small, isn't it? Then my life will be spared." He said to them, "Very well. I'll grant this request to you. I'll not overthrow that town you speak of. But flee there quickly, because I cannot do anything until you reach it." That is why the town was called Zoar. By the time Lot reached Zoar, the sun had risen over the land. The Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah, from the Lord out of the heavens. Thus He overthrew both cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities, and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and returned to the place he stood before the Lord. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward all the land on the plain. He saw the dense smoke rising over the land with the smoke from the furnace. So when God destroyed the cities of the plain, He remembered Abraham and brought Lot out of the catastrophe that overthrew the cities where Lot had lived. Story begins, and where is Lot? Where do we find Lot? He's in Sodom, not just in Sodom, but don't miss it. He's sitting at the gate. Now, what does that mean that he sat at the gate? Okay? He seems to have some authority and he seems to have some influence. Usually what would happen in the cities back then is the city gate would be where you would go to look for judgment and fairness. And so Lot, he's sitting there like he might be ready to help serve in a civil capacity. He's not just an average citizen, he is now part of the community. And which is really a big deal when you think about it. He's not taking care of his flocks and herds. He's no longer a nomad, but he is a city man. He's part of the city. But yet he does seem to understand the culture of this city, doesn't he? He sees how dark it is, doesn't he? Because the men said, well, we'll just sleep in the city square, which would have been a common thing to do. There weren't hotels, there weren't places you could sleep, there weren't inns. So you just go to a city square, you'd find a place under a tree in the city inside the walls where you're protected. And because civilized people treat each other fairly, you could sleep there. But not in Sodom and Gomorrah. And Lot knows this. So what does he do? Well, let me be hospitable. And we don't have hospitality. Hospitality isn't a rule, a law like they had back then. If I take you in to be hospitable, I am obliged to feed you, to take care of you, to provide you a place, if need be, to sleep, and to protect you. He gets him in the house, he fixes food for them, he takes care of them, and then all of a sudden a threat comes to the door, and how strongly is Lot willing to protect them? Let his daughters get ready. And there's part of me that because that culture is so foreign to me, I can't even imagine that. But it speaks to you of the culture back then. That's how serious hospitality is back then. That's how serious he was about protecting these guests. And when all is said and done, what ends up happening? He nearly gives up his life for these men. They get him inside. They say, you got to get out of here. The sound's going to be destroyed. Do you have anybody here? Who else is in there with him? You have Lot, his wife, his 2 daughters, and, well, they son-in-laws, right? Future son-in-laws. And when they find out this is going to happen, what do? What does he do? They literally laugh in his face. And these angels from God, these men of God, you have to get out. You leave these boys. Get wandering, get out of there quickly. And as I read through that, especially this time, it struck me. I hear a negotiating with God going on here, didn't you? Well, okay, I'll get out of town, but I can't get that far. Can I only go as far as Zoar? Please be merciful, be generous. You hear an echo of Abraham here, don't you? And he negotiates with him, so he only has to go as far as Zoar. Again, he's struggling with his faith. I don't think I have it in there. If the angels told me get out of here, I'm trust that you'll take care of me. I'll trust me. You'll get me where I need to be. But these guys, he's negotiating with them as he goes. Okay, get out of here, but don't look back. Now, what did it mean to not look back? What'd that mean? There's part of me as I read this story, I'm going, God, you just zapped his wife for nothing. What did she do? She's running away. And it could be a couple of different things. It could be that she's just stopping to gawk at the destruction behind her. But part of me, that just doesn't make sense. And I know we can't, the Bible doesn't say directly, but it seems really harsh if she just turned around. God said no, and I think he meant it. But there's times when God says no, and Abraham does it anyways, and he gets extended grace. Why does this one matter so much? I'm convinced it has to do with her heart. It has to do not just that she glanced back to go, whoa, that's a big fire, Lord. No, it's more of her heart wanted to go back. She longed to be back in that metropolitan heathenistic culture. Okay? What was the sin of Sodom, by the way? Okay? Obviously, there was some sexual perversion that was going on. We see that within the text. Let me throw a verse at you that to me it really gets at the heart of Sodom. In Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 49, it says, "Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They didn't help the needy." What was the sin of Sodom? They're a bunch of pompous jerks that think they're better than everybody else. They don't care about God. They're overfed. They don't care about the poor. That verse scares me in many ways, because we want to focus on the sexual perversion. What they were wanting to do had very little to do with sexuality. It had to do with power and control and arrogance. What they were wanting to do to these men was to control them, to belittle them. They were arrogant, and they were unconcerned with anybody but themselves. And that happened to be expressed through some sexual deviancy. The people of Sodom were selfish people. It makes me uncomfortable because it describes a lot of the world we live in today, doesn't it? We are overfed. We're arrogant. We're unconcerned about people that are hurting, the people in need. We only care about ourselves. In many ways, that makes us sodomites. What was she longing for? I think she was longing for that. She had adapted that arrogance, the rich foods, the culture. Her view, she had taken her eyes off God, and all of a sudden, what happens? Her view of what really mattered becomes totally messed up. Now, you take these two stories together of Abraham's negotiating and Lot's view of God, and what do you see together there? Both of them are struggling in their faith, aren't they? And yet, Lot seems to have made some choices that have some consequences. His wife definitely has a choice that makes some consequences. I look at the two different faith journeys that I see in this story, and by the time we're done with this story, Lot has lost everything but his daughters. All that wealth that he has amassed is gone on his faith journey because he's made some bad choices in his faith. His wife, because he chose to live near Sodom, has adopted into that culture, and she's dead. And so the choices we make seem to really do matter, but that journey we go on, eventually Lot ends up regaining his wealth. Now, the next section, I'll be honest, it's really weird. Him sleeping with his daughters. I don't like that part. But there's a lot of stuff in the Bible I don't like, but I got to figure it out. And that's that whole struggle with faith. But you see that journey of faith that they go on. What do you hear here? What do you learn from all this? What do you think? Why do you think God put this crazy story in the Bible?
Abraham's working out his struggle with God, and Lot is literally having to be drugged out.
Yeah. Sometimes we work out our struggles with God, and it's a better way of doing things than to be two steps behind God. There's consequences. Now, ultimately, both of them have a relationship with God, don't they? They do. One seems to have a more significant one, and he becomes a legend. The other one we don't talk about quite so much. What do you hear in this story? Why does God give us this?
You know, you mentioned some things where you just don't understand or it's kind of weird. But the big one is when having faith is contradictory to what is going on.
Yeah.
And that's when he put his son up on the altar.
Mm-hmm.
That ran up against everything. That was against the promise.
Oh, yeah. Right. And really, when we talk about our faith in God, it's easy for us to think of our faith in God as being this nice, fun thing, but it's a messy thing, isn't it? And sometimes it means and Jimmy was talking about that, taking that leap of faith, like the Indiana Jones scene where he literally just launches off, and that would be so stinking scary. I don't do heights very well. That would have just, oh my, I would have been with tears running down my face. Just don't look, I'm going to die. It's okay. And in many ways, that's kind of what Abraham did. My son's going to die and God's going to bring him back. He takes a leap of faith and jumps off that cliff. But that's what faith is. I am amazed at how difficult God is to understand. I'll be honest. And it shouldn't amaze me. It shouldn't surprise me because He's the Creator and I'm just a little speck. But at the same time, it's something I think we need to struggle with and we need to figure out. And we need to try to grasp who He is. And that to me is one of the stories I hear from this whole section here is go ahead and struggle to understand God. Trust me, you won't ever figure Him out, but at the same time, struggle to do. Go ahead and try. It's a good struggle.
I think the thing that we don't think about too is that even before Abraham went, God knew everything. He knew
Exactly.
every thought, he knew every word that was coming out of his mouth, all of it, and he knew it all. And just like for us, like our own stuff,
Mm.
he knows it all. He wants us to come to him.
Yeah. Well, and part of that faith journey it's a journey towards God. It really is. And that's where we need to keep focused on that. Nick, you had your hand.
I think too, we try and make it about us or the people, right? In reality, these stories are not about Lot and Abraham. They're about Lot and Abraham's God,
Yeah.
right? Lot, when I read that story, Lot didn't choose to leave. The angels had to grab his hand,
Yeah.
right? And God didn't give him a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't about him or his decisions. It was God was going to use them one way or the other.
Right.
It wasn't about him. It was about God.
Yeah. Anyways, rich stuff here. And there's a reason God put these stories in the Bible, and there's so many neat things in there that we can grasp. But encourage you. Struggle with God. It's okay. It's a good thing. Let's close with the prayer here, and we'll let you out here just a minute or two early even. Lord God, thank you. Thank you for being such an incredible God who we don't understand you, and that's all right. Help us in our faith journey to struggle with you. Give us wisdom in the decisions we make, that we would make wise choices as we draw near to you. Be patient with us, please, but yet at the same time, help us to grow in our faith in you and our understanding of you. Help our relationship with you tomorrow to be even richer than it is today. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks.